Welcome back. All this week, the ABC 10 weather team will be joining us right here at 6:30 for their investigation called The Future of California's Water. And leading us off tonight is a deep dive into California's complicated and outdated water rights system. Brenda Minchef and the team explains.
Tens of millions of people rely on California's water that's also helped to feed the world.
But the truth is, we are all one pie chart. I mean, we all have to utilize each other.
The rights for using California's water are complicated.
They used rubber cement, and over years, the labels have fallen off.
Tracking who gets what is antiquated.
The system has not been kept up to the complexities that we face in this kind of modern era.
As our climate changes, what can California do about its water?
We do not get to dip a straw in the ocean and just suck out what we want.
And what's already being done.
Water is life, right? We all need it every day. You need to keep the taps flowing no matter what.
This is the future of California's water, an ABC 10 weather investigation.
So this is where we hold the ancient dusty tomes. Essentially, in case of a fire emergency or something like that, this actually holds the original record.
The records room in the Cal EPA building contains some of the most important documents in the entire state.
Our files are organized in ascending order.
These are water rights documents, and they officially state who has the authority to take water, from where, and how much of it.
So we pulled out some of the earliest water rights that have been filed, some of their really, really old and hand-drawn maps.
About 7 million individual pieces of paper of all shapes and sizes, age, and utility are in this room.
Would you mind helping me turn this?
This South Bay map dates back to the 60s or 70s.
They took 6 or 8 maps and stitched them together to show the Alameda County Water District. This is the one we found, and we were like, wow, you guys went through a lot of effort to do this. They used rubber cement, and over years, the labels have fallen off, and now it's kind of like,
where does it go?
Like a puzzle piece, yeah.
But some of these older surveys and maps were drawn when folks were still traveling by horse and buggy. And as long as the water usage has not been modified, they are still valid today.
We're trying to actually reach back out to these water diverters and say, is this up to date? Is this accurate?
Because if this was the only map, you wouldn't know what they're doing.
Exactly.
Yet in this room, you won't find a single piece of paper dated before 1914. That's the year modern California water law went into effect. Prior to 1914, water rights in California were largely governed by a simple rule: first in time, first in right.
They didn't have to apply for a permit. They didn't have to obtain a piece of paper from the board that says, yes, you have a water right. They're just kind of there.
Eric Ekdahl is the Deputy Director of Water Rights at the State Water Resources Control Board, which is tasked with managing California's water rights.
There were water rights that started, as early as 1850, maybe even earlier. And in fact, there are some what we call Pueblo rights that go back into the 1700s. If you were there first and you applied for this water right, or you obtained this water right, or you're claiming it, you get that water before anyone else who comes after you. But there's also something called the riparian system, which is really if you have land that touches a water body, you're allowed to also use that water, and you have to try and balance those two competing systems with each other.
Of the roughly 40,000 water rights and claims in the state of California, about 18,000, or roughly 30% of water use in the state, are pre-1914 or riparian. Efforts are underway right now to digitize water rights records to ultimately help the environment and hold water rights violators accountable.
We're trying to be more adaptive in our management of the water in California so that we can get more out of it. To do that, there needs to be a real-time understanding of who's using what.
Yvonne West is the director of the Office of Enforcement at the State Water Resources Control Board.
There's a large number of rights in California that are claimed rights that have yet to be examined, reviewed, or validated through any sort of formal process.
And when it comes to investigations, the Water Board has limited options to enforce state water laws. In 2022, during a drought emergency, a group of ranchers in Siskiyou County turned on their pumps and took water off the struggling Shasta River for 8 days. According to the State Water Board, it was so significant that the stream flow dropped by more than half and threatened the long-term health of the Shasta River and its ecosystem. The ranchers were told to stop and fined $500 a day, but it was cheaper for them to keep the pumps on than pay to have water trucked in. Their penalty totaled just $4,000.
It's really hard to use those emergency powers in the way that they're needed.
Marquise King Mason, with the environmental advocacy organization California Environmental Voters, is one of the people working behind the scenes on water rights.
If it's for agricultural usage, right? Like they could be getting tens of thousands of dollars from that, but they only had to pay a small amount for like what was some unrepairable harm to that waterway. And so the water board can't, they can say like, stop doing this, but it takes weeks for that. It has to go through a court and has to like actually be implemented. And so the system has not been, I think, kept up to the complexities that we face in this kind of modern era.
Well, this is precisely why we need to give more tools to the water board to manage the system.
California State Senator Ben Allen is one of the many people in this state working on the future of water. He sits on the state Senate's Natural Resources and Water Committee, working on water rights.
One of the things we have to do is figure out how to handle a very different environment here. Even the people who are most vested in the status quo understand that the status quo is not sustainable.
Senator Allen, along with state representatives Buffy Wicks and Rebecca Bauer-Cahan, California environmental voters, and others, are pushing for new legislation that empowers the water board to make quicker, more decisive action, especially in times of drought.
When we have periods of water emergency, they will have the ability to come in and fix the situation more decisively. One of the questions we have to ask ourselves going forward is how do we give the water board the tools it needs to ensure that we've got enough water for everybody, while also respecting existing water rights so that everybody can continue to grow. And that's the challenge here.
But some people, even within Senator Allen's own party, do not agree on a solution. It's a challenge made even more difficult by climate change.
We're seeing what we call weather whiplash, from dry to wet, and the dries are drier and hotter and kind of more severe. So responding to that and doing it quickly is pretty challenging.
And Brendan joins us right now. Brendan, we know the next part of this process is digitizing all of those records. Can you give us some insight onto how that will work and also the benefits of it too?
Yeah, well, it's important because right now, as you saw in the video, a lot of those rights are physical pieces of paper in a folder in essentially an office space. And, there's sprinkler systems in that room. It's not fireproofed. If anything bad were to happen, those rights could be destroyed, and those rights prop up our trillion-dollar economy, right, that we have here in the state of California. So digitizing is important for that reason, the security of the water rights, but also access to them. Right now, anyone could go down and look at water rights, but it would be a lot easier if you could go to a website and pull up that data. But it's an involved process. Like we said in the package, there's 7 million individual pieces of paper that need to be digitized, and not all of them are your standard 8x11s. So there's different ways that you got to do it. You can see the map scanner right there. That's for bigger pieces, but some pieces are damaged or have torn corners or difficult to read. So they're also trying to repair the documents that need repairing and not just scan them broken or torn and say, well, that's the way it is. They're really making an effort here to make these water rights accessible as well as secure.
And we're talking about millions of pieces of paper
7
here.
million.
How long is this going to take?
Yeah, well, the official timeline is 10 to 20 years. I will say there's hope, and there is the expectation that will be a lot less than 20 years. But they wouldn't give me an official time frame. But
they're working on it.
The hope is that it will be less than 10 to 20 years.
All right, Brendan, thank you so much. We appreciate it.